Welcome to Slasher Sunday. As you can see, I got rid of this big ass chair that used to be right here. So now we can see things a little better back there. That chair was taking up way too much space in here anyway. So my next little series I want to tackle here for Slasher Sunday is the Wolf Creek series. Now, we have part 1, we have part 2, and then what I was thinking is I will do season 1 one week and season 2 the next week of the TV series, which I have yet to watch. So that will be a first time watch for me. I did watch the first episode of season 1, but I have not seen the rest of it. But this is the perfect time. It's currently on Shudder and everything, so I'm going to finally watch that stuff, and I'm going to give a spoiler discussion on every episode on each season per Slasher Sunday week. So should have 4 Slasher Sundays set aside now for the Wolf Creek franchise. And when I looked online, it shows that the 3rd one is currently filming. So there you go. I did not know that. I knew that they wanted to make it. It did not say whether or not Greg McLean was coming back to direct or not, but this is really like John Jarrett's franchise at this point. So as long as he's back, which it shows that he is, I'm definitely on board. But I would like the director to return. Now, this one is supposedly based on actual events. Now, I did not look this actual case up, which I wish I would have taken a little time to do that, but I didn't. And so I'm just going to go off of the information presented within the film. So for those historians or those people who will correct me or tell me the real story down below who have taken the time to look at it, go for it. But for now, we're just going to say that at the end of this movie, spoilers obviously, Ben ends up surviving. And Ben was in a building or something for the entirety of it. And then he got himself down off the wall and he walked out of there and he found himself safety, and then he went to court and then testified. So he didn't see absolutely anything that happened to the girls, nor did anybody except for the killer, who was never found. So everything with the chicks is completely made up. Like, everything else might be true, but everything else for sure is made up. So based on actual events, that's like the open water thing where they drive the boat away and they leave people behind, and then they're like, well, sharks must have ate them, and here's the story. And it's like, the real story is that you just left some people behind. They probably drowned. You don't know what the fuck happened. So this is one of those things where it's like, and it even, and this is where I'm saying correct me with the real story of what happened, but the way that the credits portray this, when it's saying the little text at the end of what happened, it almost feels like Ben could have been responsible. I don't think that's what they're trying to imply, but when I was reading the text at the end of it saying like, it was really just his testimony and he came back by himself and it was a killer, it was the one-armed man, it was some Puerto Rican guy. To me, like, that's a little suspect. Like, you drive 2 chicks out in the middle of nowhere, then you come back and you're like, oh, somebody killed them. Totally not me. So I don't know the story at all, but I, just reading that, I was like, it seems a little fishy. Just a little fishy. But yeah, I mean, I really just can't imagine what a loved one going missing would feel like. I've talked about this on the channel enough. I think it's the worst fate that any parent can ever endure. It's terrible to say this, but I think it's true. I would rather know my kid is dead than to have them missing and to never know what happened to them. Like, that's what, that's what I love so much about The Vanishing, the Kiefer Sutherland one, is he goes into that little rant, like, I have this fantasy in my head where, she's happy and she's totally fine, and I never get to know what happens to her, or she's dead and I do get to know what happens to her, and I get to choose this. And he's like, I would choose knowing, because I would choose her to die. I would choose her just because I can't live like this anymore. I completely get where he's coming from in that regard. So watching this and thinking of these people going missing, because that's how it starts. Like 30,000 people are reported missing, or whatever the number is, in Australia. And like 90% of them are found within a month or within a week or something. And then like some of them are never seen from again. Never seen or heard from again. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. Now, some of them might have ran away, but yeah, some of them were kidnapped. Some of them were killed. Some of them died, fell and no one found their bodies, whatever. And just to not know, just to never know what happened to your daughter, to your sister, to, whoever. It's too much. It's too much for our brains. Like, especially like mine, where I overthink everything like 10 times over. My brain would never stop. I don't think I could sleep. I think I'd kill myself. I just don't think I'd be able to handle it. I really don't. It would be it would definitely be a fate worse than death. Worse than death. But anyways, moving on from that, anytime I see these movies where it says like people go missing and all that, I just start to freak the fuck out thinking about like one of my kids going missing, or both of them. It's literally beyond comprehension. I could not function, and I would never stop. I wouldn't kill myself because I would never stop looking. I'd be that Kiefer Sutherland character 5 years later, and I'd still be out every fucking day, canvassing the area, questioning people, putting up flyers, fucking doing everything I could, going to the police station, be like, "Oh, fuck have you guys done?" I'd be the lunatic that you see in these movies, 100% for sure. Anyway, now, okay. So Ben, Christy, and Liz actually wrote their names down. Can you believe it? Liz is the brunette, Christy's the blonde, and Ben's the guy, obviously. Now, there's a scene where they're partying. Now, Christy is trying to hook Liz and Ben up. There's a scene where Christy wakes up next to a guy in bed and sneaks out before he can wake up. It looks like Ben, but I don't think it is. Or is it? If it is, that's really bizarre. Because that just wouldn't make sense to the film. They never allude to it otherwise. They never look at each other like, shh, can't tell. It's just not him. Maybe the tattoos probably gave it away if I was going to look closer. But just when he woke up, I was just like, oh, they slept together? Interesting. And then as she was getting up and as the film went on, I'm like, I don't think that was him. I think I was fucking seeing things there. So, can someone correct me on that? Has somebody seen this movie enough? Was that supposed to be Ben? If it was, did she fuck him? And if so, then whoa, okay, that's a totally different thing. But, alright, so they buy this $1,500 car and they're traveling across the damn country. And they stop in this little town and there's these dickhead locals who are talking shit to them. And, honestly, as you get older, that whole I gotta stand up for what's right, I've gotta speak out, some of that starts to diminish a bit. You get to see the folly of it all. You get to see how pointless it is. In that situation, he did the perfectly right thing. He beats himself up for it when he leaves and he's like, I should have fucking, smashed the guy or whatever he says. And to me, I'm just sitting there no, dude. I've been that guy for sure. And it's just, it really doesn't do anything. You're not doing anything in that situation. Now, if the guy was to physically go after her, so of course, and you beat the fuck out of him, that's completely different. But just words, just let it go. It's really not worth it. It just isn't. Like, whenever, now that I'm not saying that I've adhered to this advice, I have not, but when I was younger, I always seemed to think I needed to go to bat. Now, when someone's picking on somebody else, I tend to step in, and they have to really push for it to get violent, but I'm going to be this person to speak up in a situation. Like, if somebody's saying something to people around me that's clearly outrageous, that's clearly just fucking like demeaning or mean-spirited for no reason, and especially if it's like some of my friends or something that I'm out with, and fucking forget it. I'm, of course, going to be the person in there. But if you can get out of it without fighting, it's the better option. It's the better option. But yeah, if somebody's like physically assaulting you, if somebody's doing something that warrants an ass beating, then of course, then go for it. But just words. He does the right thing here. He just leaves. Nothing comes of it. He doesn't get hurt, and you never know. You never know who you're fighting. I mean, that guy that was in the bar probably would have beat the shit out of him, to be completely honest. You don't know, though. I mean, that's just the thing. You always think you're a badass until you go and fight somebody, and then you find out what a real badass you are or are not. And just because you can beat up that guy does not mean you're going to be able to beat up the next guy. So, you know, it's unadvisable to fight some random dude at a bar or in a local place, because you have no fucking idea who you're fighting. They could rip you apart. As much as I think I would beat the shit out of some guy, he could easily destroy me if he was, so inclined, or if he knew what he was doing or whatever. So, yeah. I just thought that scene was worth talking about just on a more personal level. Like, just not worth it, man. Just let it go. You're not, like, what are you achieving by, like, bringing it to a physical altercation over words? Like, let words go. Words don't really matter that much. They really just don't. People put way too much stock into them. I'm not saying they don't matter at all. You just can't let them get to you to the point where you're going to allow yourself to either be physically harmed, harm other people, or suffer jail time and your body being damaged. And it's so fucking pointless. It really, really is. Anyway, moving on. And so they make their way out to Wolf Creek, or as it should have been called, Wolf Crater. I'm not really sure what the creek is, and they mention many creeks in this, so there's a different word for creek than I know. I actually have a creek like right behind my house over here, and we go down to it like every Monday typically with the kids. There's like 4 waterfalls. They're really nice. No one even knows they're here. They're kind of like a special little spot. Very few people know they're around. Even when I tell locals who have been here for years, they're like, where, what, who, what? We go down there. Beautiful, man. There's like 4 really cool waterfalls all together. And it's like a totally unknown location. So it's really, really cool. So they go down there. It's a 3-hour hike out. They see the crater. And, Ben and Liz have their little moment, and they get their first kiss, and they're laughing, and it's idyllic, and it's sweet. It's such a good feeling. I mean, that first kiss with somebody, like the honeymoon phase, the excitement of like sitting next to somebody who you are having chemistry with, and there's like this anticipation that grows, and you slightly like make your hand over to like touch their leg accidentally, and you like you try to see what you can start to get away with, just because you have this desire to touch them, just because you have this yearning to lay any part of you onto them. Like, it doesn't even matter what the fuck it is, your fingernails brushing against their thigh, and it's like exciting. It's and that's when like you're interested in somebody. And in that moment, like, especially if there's like a bunch of build up, like through years of your friendship, if there's like friends for years, or even if it's like weeks, months, and you're hanging around somebody, you really like them, and then you kind of slowly touch each other, or like slowly, like, you know, you sit next to each other, you find excuses. There's always that, like, you know, when I'm with chicks who we start to have that with, they'll like grab my arm. That's how you get. They always grab my arm and they'll be like, oh, how's your, oh, let me look at your tattoo, and they'll put their hand all the way down your tattoo, like feeling your arm, and it's like, you don't need, it's not Braille. You don't need to feel me up. Of course, I'm not complaining in the moment, because I want them to do it. Sometimes not. Sometimes every once in a while I have like a client who's like trying to hit on me, and they'll like grab my arm and be like, oh, let me see your tattoos. Let me touch, and like, let's calm it down. Okay, let's focus on the hair. That first kiss, that like just getting those little victories, those little acceptances, like just like kind of like brushing, or like you sit down next to him on the couch and your shoulders touch, and you're like, ooh, ooh, we're touching shoulders, like this is kinky, you know, and then you fast forward the clock and you fucked each other 100 times, and you know, problems start to set in, and all that like magic starts to leave. Not in every case, by any means. I definitely think there's people, really, really well-matched couples that keep the magic alive indefinitely. But unfortunately, for the most part, most people settle, in my opinion, and that magic starts to kind of dissipate because of life, or because of the lack of real actual interest. But man, that first time, that first like kiss, fuck, man, I'm telling you, that first kiss sometimes can trump, you know, sex or anything else. That first touch, that first like look into each other's eyes, and like you touch their face and you can see how receptive they are to it. Or anyways, I'm like masturbating all over you guys right now just thinking about like falling in love. I'm pathetic. All right. I shouldn't say pathetic. That's not the apt word here, but you know, I don't know. Moving on. Now, having your car start or not be able to start when you're out in the middle of nowhere, that is a terrifying feeling. I mean, genuinely terrifying feeling. Like anytime I ever go anywhere in my car, and I know that like if my car was to not start when I turn it off, and I'd be fucked, it's terrifying. It's a really, really scary feeling. So, yeah, I mean, they're very much fucked in this situation. And it's kind of like a tourist destination a little bit. It doesn't look like anybody goes there much, but more than likely someone's going to show up. Unfortunately, it's Mick that shows up, and Mick sabotaged their car while they were gone. And when they come back, he's there to help them. And John Jarratt, who plays this guy, man, he does give a great performance. I mean, it is kind of fucked up and kind of there's almost a perversion to it, to like glorify the actions of a killer that could have been, and then to like make it into a franchise for people's entertainment, and for like the family members of the people who disappeared are like, oh cool, I'm glad you think the person who maybe killed my daughter is so entertaining. Like, there is that weirdness to that, I will admit. It doesn't stop my enjoyment of the film, but I definitely understand. Like, if my kids went missing, and then they made a movie about it, and then made like a franchise out of it, and he became like an iconic horror villain, and they were like, oh man, I love, people went and got tattoos of like him on their arm, and I'm like, wow, cool. Like, that's the person who they made up to have killed my kids, who are currently still missing, by the way, and you are glorifying that by putting body art on you to represent him forever. You know what I mean? Like, it's a real touchy thing, I honestly think, with these like true stories becoming glorified and franchised, and you know what I mean? Anyway, as I said, I really enjoy part 2. The TV series, I'm sure, will be fun. I'm looking forward to 3, but it is that like thing in the back of my mind when I watch them. I'm like, oh, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine being the parent. I couldn't imagine being a family member, a loved one, whatever. But whatever. John Jarratt, not whatever dismissively, it's just like, what else can I do? You know? But anyways, John Jarratt is great in this role. I mean, he's fucking fantastic. He's he's what carries this franchise. He's definitely who you're coming back for. You want to see him. Like, if they tried to make a Wolf Creek without him, forget it. Like, no one would want to watch it. So he is the face of the franchise. He is a great villain. If it wasn't for the true story type aspect of it, you know, it would just be fucking solid all the way across. It'd be like, yeah, this is a fantastic performance. This is a great character. You know, no problems there. And so now when they're talking to Mick, he says that he was like a headhunter for these animals, and that he like pretty much loved his job, and he's kind of you know, bragging essentially, or romanticizing what he used to do with this whole like, I killed like 50 bison or whatever the hell. Bison? Something else. I think he said something else. Doesn't matter. He killed like 50 of these animals in like a day. And you know, he's talking about like gutting pigs and seeing a pig rip a Rottweiler or some kind of dog's head off and all this shit. And then he's like, but then basically technology, which this is poison, replaced him, and he's still bent out of shape about it. And he's just like, that's not the way to do it. Like, I was the way to do it. Now this, of course, heavily reminds me of the hitchhiker scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when the hitchhiker comes in and says, we used to kill the cattle, but now they use that gun thing, and it made us lose our jobs. Like, you know, the hammer's better, you know, they died better that way, you know, that kind of shit. Like, he liked what he did, and now this job's been taken away from him. And who knows, maybe that set him off. Maybe like he got enough out of it when he was killing animals, and then they fired him from it, and he was like, I like taking lives, and maybe I'll just start taking human lives. They're a more dangerous game to hunt anyways. So I could definitely see that being somewhat possible, but not that people who go out and hunt are just like wanting to kill people. I don't believe that at all. But this guy's clearly sick in the head. Not a good guy. Not someone you want to have over for any reason. His laugh is great, so that's another iconic part of him. Then they go to sleep and they wake up tied up. Oh my God, you imagine? You're out in the middle of nowhere with this guy. And this is such a mean-spirited film. Like, he gets off on torturing them. Genuinely. Like, he's like sitting there, he's like shooting next to the girl's head. He's talking about how he's gonna fuck her, he's gonna use a condom because he doesn't know where she's been, and he comes over and like yells in her face and slaps her around. Like, he gets off on like relishing in her misery, in the fact that he has control over her. Like, this is a sick individual. I really like all the choices pretty much made here. I don't think there's a lot of bad choices made in this movie by the characters, which is really stunning. You know, Liz gets the gun. She shoots him straight in the throat. She goes over. She tries to kill him. She like tries to fire the gun into him multiple times. The gun won't work, so she starts beating him with the freaking rifle. Like, she really tried to make sure he was dead. I mean, she could have done a better job. She could have grabbed a knife and cut his throat. Whatever. Like, okay, we could go down that road, but fuck, man, just the fact that she like tried to fire into him multiple times. Outside of that, the fact that she was like smashing him with the rifle, all that stuff, like, fuck yes, dude. Thank you, Greg McLean, for putting that kind of stuff in here, because it really is something you just need to see more of. You really, really do. So good on him for that one. And they make it out of there, and they make it look like they've crashed his truck to try to get away from him because he's chasing them, which was really smart at that moment, because they weren't going to get away otherwise. I mean, they don't end up getting away anyway, but like, it was this diversion tactic, and it almost, you know, could have worked. But then she makes her way back, and she finds all these trophies that he keeps. This seems like a silly thing to do, but lots of serial killers do it, so You know, I'm not going to say he wouldn't. Just thinking it's a pretty stupid idea there, Mick. Pretty easy to figure out. But then again, what does it matter that he has some newspaper clippings when he has all their cars and their bodies still on the lot? So I guess those are probably the least of his worries if the cops show up. When you keep like all of your victims in a little shed and all their cars, which is another thing that Texas Chainsaw Massacre does, where they look under the coverings and there's like a bunch of cars inside there. So this has definite elements of Texas Chainsaw. And let's see. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, she finds the pit of bodies, just pit of like festering, rotting corpses down. Oh my god, could you imagine? Wow. And then, yeah, she fucking gets in the car and he stabs her as she comes out, cuts off her fingers, and then severs her spinal column. Whew. Whoa. Damn, man. Now, the gore in this movie isn't very high. The second one, there's tons of brutal gore on screen. That one's even more mean-spirited than this one. But in this one, the budget's lower, this and that. I can be forgiving of it. Because even though the kills aren't that, like, great looking, they're so evil and they're so fucking mean-spirited that it kind of makes up for the lack of gore. It's like, damn, like I feel the impact of it happening even though I'm not really seeing it happen, you know? Like as long as you can like make me feel like I've felt it or seen it, then you've accomplished your goal in the kill department. And this movie definitely does that. And then the other girl makes her way out to this guy. Poor people, man. Poor people that try to help these victims in these horror movies and end up getting themselves killed. You know, those people who drive right past and never stop for people, they always seem to live. Almost always. So, maybe you shouldn't stop. Maybe you shouldn't stop. I probably wouldn't be able to not stop, especially if some girl ran up to me bloody. I know myself, I'd have to help. But then the guy pulls over and then he like goes into the trunk to get her like a blanket or something, and then he looks over. This is such a great shot. He looks over and there's a hole in his canister and he's just like, huh? And then he like looks over and boom, you just hear this gunshot. You hear the gunshot and then boom, his head explodes. Like, we don't get to see the head explosion very good, but then when, like, we see the aftermath and his head's, like, laying on the ground and freaking brain matter and skull and everything are everywhere, oh, man, it's like the freaking backseat of Jules' car. Why am I the motherfucker back here on brain detail? Every time I touch brain, I'm Superfly TNT. Fuck, man, I love Pulp Fiction so much. And then, yeah, I mean, he hunts her ass down, shoots out her tire, she gets out of the car, and he just walks up and fucking guns her down. Like, no quippy one-liners, no her pleading for her life, no him, like, saying, you know, you bitch, you got this and that. Nothing. Just very cold, very concise, very, like, you know, just quick. It's brutal. I'm not used to it. Like when he walked up and shot her, I was like, oh fuck, man, that was dark. Like, wow, that's not typical. And then we switch over to Ben, and he's gets himself up off the crucifix, and he makes his way to safety. He has no idea what the fuck happened, and there we go, end of the movie, and we see Mick walking off into the sunset, free as a bird to kill again, which he will in Wolf Creek 2, which we will visit next week. So until then, guys, I will be seeing you very, very soon for Monster Monday, which I'm going to record right now. Adios.